Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show. We're just waiting for the backup stream to start. Here's our obligatory plug for Agenda 21, Behind the Green Mask by Rosa Corey. You can get that on Amazon. Today's show is, of course, as always, listener supported. So please share the links around and let's get that backup stream going. Here we go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show, the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state is Vinny's jokes. And my very special guest today is Billy TK. This episode is, of course, as always, sponsored by the New Zealand Public Party, trying to reclaim New Zealand for all the people. In fact, we are going to reclaim New Zealand for all the people, principally because the alternative is being slaves forever. So not the best way to start the show, I know, and I'm sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. But there are other reasons why I'm doing this as well. For example, two recent headlines from the BFD, Labour now under official investigation by the Serious Fraud Office. And this article here as well. Checkpoints, soldiers, door-to-door testing, New Zealand's new COVID outbreak plan. So this is, if it hasn't been scaring you enough, ladies and gentlemen, perhaps you haven't been paying close enough attention. So, Billy, welcome back. It is TK Tuesday again.
Thank you. Kia ora, Vinny, and kia ora, everybody. Great to be here. And just funny, watching some of the comments that are coming up on the side there. What we did the other day, by the way, we sent out copies of my military record card, which is my service card. Actually, because these silly people like Terry Opines, who I don't know, says I was never in the military. I don't know if you can see that. That's my military army card there. So what we did was we sent this out and made a public record that I am ex-military. I have done all the courses that I've said I've done. It's just crazy. But I just saw that question come up and I thought I'd quickly whip it out while it's in my pocket. I'm proud of it. I've carried it in my wallet now for 16 years since I left the army. So it's something that all servicemen and women are proud of, and I've got mine. So there you go. Hope that answers that person's question.
Well, that's another thing as well. I was watching the interview with Terry Opines and John Ansell, and it appeared to me that the only way they would trust you is if you signed a piece of paper saying that you're not going to do X amounts of things, right? And what I found that very interesting because you've answered most of in fact, all questions that have been asked of you, but they don't believe it. But somehow, if you sign a piece of paper, they'll believe it without question. They'll get right behind you. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think they just, like me, take some convincing necessarily simply because it's very, very difficult. Trust is a very, very hard commodity to come by, especially in this political environment.
Oh, that's right. We had a meeting last night in Tauranga with the planning team, and it is just horrible what's sweeping across this nation, the fear, the distrust, people that are just so frightful of trusting anybody that's standing up like we are. And I feel for everybody. I'm exactly the same. If somebody appeared on the radar from out of nowhere, like we have done, like I have done, I'll be wanting some assurances and to be made comfortable and secure that this is somebody I can trust. So I 100% get it. But what these men do, they actually reveal more about themselves, Vinny, that they've got a bit of a rattle in the old brain. Because if, as you know, I've been a musician most of my life, except when I've been in the army and done business stuff. And my history's out there for all to see. These blinking, if I was going to do due diligence on me, I'd probably be the easiest guy to ever do that on. And, Terry was saying that I've never been in the military. Well, hold on a second. What due diligence did he do to establish that or not? Where did he get in touch with the NZDF? Did he get in touch with the New Zealand Army for some sort of verification? and it's just crazy. So what we did the other week when we were in Palmerston North, because we have Linton Army Camp there, we had some former soldiers come in. We have had some wives of current soldiers come in, and so what we did actually, we did a closed. Our party director did a closed email out to them of my military service ID, and it's great because they all know that you can't have that sort of stuff on you and share that out and not get exposed if you're a fake. And one thing I really do take seriously is stolen valor, where people say that they've either served in the military when they haven't or something like that. I'm just totally against it. So actually, Terry probably wouldn't have a clue how serious an allegation that is, that all of us members and former members of NZDF take that when someone says that they've been in the military and haven't been. That's called stolen valor, and we take that very, very seriously.
You're talking about a personal offence here, aren't you?
Oh, a little bit, but he's just uninformed. He's gone off on a tangent. I don't know, Terry. I've never seen any of his posts. He just sounds like he's just got a bit of a rattle on his upstairs componentry of his body. So I'm not taking him seriously. And to be honest, Vinny, we've got 50-something days to defeat this tyrannical government and prevent another tyrannical government from going in. And that's completely our focus now. I wouldn't even notice if my mum started trolling me now. We're just so intent on what we've got to do to protect our country and our rights while we have them.
Yeah, and I recall a post I made about this as just saying, in terms of the accusations and all of these kind of things, to a large degree at this point in the game, sitting there explaining and doing these long posts, actually spending the time to do that is not a good use of resources at this particular time. I'm not 100% sure that people who are unconvinced will be convinced by facts, and I'm sure that there are probably people who will think that the card that you just showed us is some kind of a forgery or some kind of a fake, and therefore I think to a large degree, let's focus on the task at hand, which is saving the country from ruthless criminal sociopathic scumbaggery. End of.
Yeah, dead right. So, for us, it's about uncovering information around what's happening with the threat to democracy that we're dealing with. I was on an encrypted phone call today with a member of the NZDF talking about what's going on with some of the training that's going on with soldiers walking around Ohakuni with weapons and doing patrol drills. It has turned out that they are part of what they call Officer Cadet School OCS training, where they learn how to patrol in urban environments. But it's just incredible timing that this annual exercise happens at the same time that the concerns around cabinet papers that show that this government wants to have 85 checkpoints across New Zealand in the case of a regional lockdown, and up to 85 checkpoints, and they're going to use a mixture of military personnel and police, and then they will use the same sort of mix to do mandatory house-by-house testing, and that's something completely unprecedented. We can't stand for it. We're a democracy. We're not North Korea. We're not Soviet Russia. We're not China. We shouldn't for one second accept any of that as being normal. The new normal that this government talks about and that the rest of the governments talk about around the world is not the right normal. It's not the democratic normal, and we shouldn't be accepting it. The other thing that we're doing as well, we're looking keenly on the economy and watching this government dig us deeper and deeper into debt, and also with the destruction of the tourism sector and various business sectors such as our primary sectors, which are huge contributors to our GDP, and finding out what their behaviour is telling us. Really, I mean, what I would say to anybody, whether it be me or anyone else that ends up in Parliament, is that don't listen to what people say, examine the behaviour, because politicians, and this is the reason why I've traditionally not liked politicians, is that they turn on a dime when it suits them, with their integrity and their points of views, and that's just, we shouldn't be standing for that, any of that kind of conduct from members of Parliament who we pay their salaries. We pay their salaries. They don't have the liberty to be dishonest with us and to do things in stealth. So we're definitely digging deeper and deeper and deeper into things. We're looking at some of the environmental programs that this country has entered into. We're looking at who's involved right in the 1080 industry, finding out who's who that owns these companies that import the materials that they need to make 1080, etc. And it's not good. It's not good at all.
Can I add to that as well?
Yep.
Because I believe Waikato City Council and some of the councillors actually had shares in the 1080 companies that they were approving drops for.
Yeah, correct. And we've heard some other things, connected to Bill English and a few other people that we're wanting to verify. So before we come out with statements and that they be made on a hard standing basis, we got to make sure that we get our facts straight. We research and really make sure that we verify that. And just on that note, Vinny, you remember weeks ago that NZPP and I posted information about how we assessed the outcomes and consequences could look like by the transferal of the quarantine management to military. We stood there and we said, look, we guarantee that the military will be operationalised. We said that they'll use military for security at these quarantine facilities. Just went through the whole thing, and people said, no, you're dreaming, Billy. It's all this, it's all that. And sure enough, we're seeing that. So we've had families this week that are in quarantine reach out to us. I did a post last night that I hope is shared far and wide, which says there are at least two options for COVID-19 testing. One is, of course, the fully invasive nasal test, but there is a second one, which is the throat test, this throat swab, and it's far less invasive, very quick and easy to do, no pain, no sense of invasion, and done in a few seconds, and it's good for kids. But what they do is that at the border, they don't tell you this. The medical staff are acting threateningly to people, which is unprecedented as well, and they're not letting people know that there is a second option. So what we're saying to all inbound New Zealanders and Kiwis coming home to New Zealand Aotearoa, that they know that there are two options. There's a nasal option, there's a throat swab, and if they don't want the nasal invasion, that they can stand on their rights and say no, they can resist it, decline it, and demand that it be a throat swab, and they have to comply with that, but they don't offer it. And then medical staff are using language like, if you don't do the first suggestion, which is the nasal test, there will be consequences. And I cannot believe for 1 second that threatening language like that is being used by medical staff who take a Hippocratic oath to do the best for people. It's disgusting.
They used to take a Hippocratic oath, but now they take a hypocritical oath instead. The question on Terry and John's minds was: are you an agent of the Maori King? Are you still working for him? Do you? I mean, the laugh says it all. But at the end of the day, people are genuinely concerned about the Maorification of New Zealand to a large degree. Could you speak to that issue? Because I think John has proved with statistics that 96% of New Zealanders do not speak Maori, and approximately 70% of New Zealanders don't want it to be called Aotearoa.
Well, that's always a matter of taste. But in regards to the thing about the Maori King, so what happened was I got asked if I would help advise the Tuheitia, King Tuheitia, around international relationships and trade. So I thought, okay, that sounds good. I did 2 months as an external person. Looking at the whole thing to do with trade and international relationships. I lasted 2 months. Why did I last 2 months? Because I saw the amount of issues that were involved within the King's office. I saw nepotism. I saw things that were being done behind his back that I didn't agree with. I saw a lack of integrity in the way that certain individuals were behaving. So what I did after a couple of months of trying to understand the layout of the land and what it looked like, I gave my resignation, and I made it very, very clear why I was resigning, and gave that. And so it was a very short-lived relationship. I certainly don't wish the King any ill will, but that organisation is probably the epitome of some of the reasons why we have so much trouble within the Māori community, and so many issues that aren't being sorted, and so that need to be sorted. Such as, golly, just all the statistics that we feature and that Māori feature in, need to be addressed, and it's not happening in the so-called iwi leadership, and it's certainly not happening at the right level in the kingitanga. So, what I always say to people is that we need to start moving beyond grievance mode, and we need to start finding ways that will advance not only all people, but also the Maori people, because we seem to be the leaders in some of the poorest statistics and type of statistics. So it's really about having an honest corridor conversation around that. And I was very delighted last night to spend the last part of my evening with some really wonderful leaders from the Maori community that speak the same honest language that I do, and want to deal with it without the without the shackles of the so-called iwi leadership and the kingitanga. We need to actually get pragmatic and come up with practical reasons to help our people progress in the right way.
Yeah, and I recall speaking with a Aboriginal tribal leader, and some of Maori tribal leaders and First Nations people from Canada told me the exact same thing, that there are those whom basically try to appear to be all about their people, but in actual fact what they're there to do is to placate their own people and line their own pockets. And they've got different names for them in each culture. In Aboriginal culture, they're called coconuts because they're brown on the outside but they're white on the inside. and in New Zealand, according to Ruben Taipuri, they're called the kupapa. So yeah, I think that it makes a lot more sense when you realise that just because somebody's got a pigmentation to their skin doesn't mean that they're all one.
No, that's right. And number one is when you bleed, what colour is that? It's red, and we all bleed the same colour. And I don't buy in any of this racial segregation stuff. I don't believe it for a second. We spoke about it last week. My whānau and I, when we go to hospitals, we get treated beautifully just the way it was. And this nonsense around racial prioritisation is just I think there are institutional problems that we need to address in regards to the way that Māori are treated. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's actually find out what's really happening and deal with it in an open conversation, and not politicise it so that the truth of the reality gets lost in political speak and positioning. I do want to come back to what you just said around leaders within Indigenous cultures that get into these positions where they line their own pockets, and that's junketism. That's nepotism, and I absolutely stand opposed to it. One of the big things that I say in my presentations when I talk about te tiriti o Waitangi and some of those issues like that is that I say that I'm sick of the stories of where you hear of iwi leaders that have their $200,000 car and their $150,000 to $200,000 salaries, and they're driving past their own people that are feeding their kids Weet-Bix for dinner. I totally oppose any of that, but I oppose it in the same way when you think about the likes of people like Jacinda Ardern having junket trips. It's just rife through everything, and I'm very proud that I have a relationship with the current national chief or national president of the National Congress of American Indians. His name is Lieutenant Governor Jefferson Keel, and he's a very wonderful man from the Chickasaw Nation. And he is the nation's leader, and he's also the lieutenant governor of his own people. And he is as humble as you get. He's got a nice car, but he's got a humble home, and everything that they spend gets absolutely reviewed and absolutely examined before they spend a dime on any junket type situation. And if they can't justify it, they don't do it. And it's open, it's given good oversight. Another Māori leader that I respect greatly is a relative of mine, Sir Mark Solomon. He's the same way. The amount of things that he hasn't approved and trips that he hasn't gone on because he just can't justify them. And it's just, that junket culture that we stand against. And him and I are sharing exactly the same views. And if you remember the other week, we talked about him and I both declining a trip to China because we couldn't justify it and we didn't want to be seen as if we were a part of that junket culture.
Now, we've got another question in from Terry Opines there. Now, Terry, are you going to apologise for calling Billy a liar and a communist, that kind of thing, considering those claims have been rebutted? That's one of my questions for Terry. But he says, Billy, besides your supporters, who else is supporting you? Are you going to provide evidence of exactly who is funding you? And that's funny to me because I know who's funding you, and it's all just coming in piecemeal as the meeting happens. The kohas come in from the people who are actually coming to the meetings and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, and I had someone pay for my flight from Auckland to Tauranga for me last night. Just a lovely supporter. We live on a pay it forward basis. So when we do events and we fundraise, the local teams try and cover as much as they can. And as much as possible themselves through fundraising. What money that we collect on the door gets paid for to cover the next event, where you might go into a community like we did the other week. I won't say where it was, and it's a very lower socioeconomic area that we went into. We had a great event, but the people don't have a lot of money there. I think we did about $200 in koha, and yet there's three of us, a couple of vehicles, flights, travel, accommodation, food, and all that. And so what we do is that we just spread the money around as best as we can, so that we can keep going. We don't have any major corporate sponsors whatsoever. And if anyone wanted to give us any sorts of large money, we'd be the first to make sure that it didn't come with strings and that it was discoverable and transparent. Because what you don't want to have, which is what Labor's in trouble for, is when you get CCP agents, Chinese Communist Party agents, giving you money and saying, oh look, we just want you to win the vote. And by the way, here's 50 grand, here's 200 grand, or whatever. We just don't want any of that. And if we did get someone giving us that money, we'd be taking it public immediately. I'm not saying we would say, no, golly, we need money to do it. I laughed when it says that you're allowed $1.2 million to spend on a campaign. We would love to have $1.2 million to spend on a campaign.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, if you've got $1.2 million, now's your chance to go to Koha, bro. Now, the other question is, I remember John Ansell was on with Willie and John Tamahiri on Radio Live a number of years ago, and I called in to ask them a question, but the interview didn't last long enough, so I didn't get to ask it. But my question was, what percentage of treaty settlement money goes directly to the poorest of Maori, and what kind of car do you drive, Willie? He drives a V8 Dodge Ram, like a $56,000 vehicle, a gas guzzler, And I was just thinking to myself, I'm starting to wonder whether or not there is anything genuine being done on mainstream media anymore, considering how the rivers of money that are actually running through it. And indeed, I believe David Icke came to New Zealand and he did a section of his broadcast which talked about Oak Tree Publishing. You ever heard of Oak Tree Publishing, Billy?
No, I haven't. I actually haven't.
They own MediaWorks. All right, and it's a giant consortium hedge fund essentially, and what they do, it was like this, like a pair of Russian dolls, right? As soon as you go into the corporate ownership of any of these major corporations in New Zealand that are actually internationalist in nature, you find that they're internationalist in ownership as well, and there's a very direct connection between the scumbaggery media and the scumbaggery government, as I could illustrate with, for example, the Stephen Joyce example, who was the former CEO of MediaWorks. Under his tenure, MediaWorks got into $40 million of debt thereabouts because of unpaid broadcast licensing fees, because people didn't care about watching MediaWorks enough to support it. And so when Stephen Joyce got into Parliament, he became the communications minister and brokered a bailout for his former company and didn't ask for one share in it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the type of conflict of interest behaviour that we just can't stand for anymore in New Zealand. I think we've just got to bloody, excuse that phrase, deal with it and prevent all of that sort of nonsense, it wouldn't surprise me. We know that most of the world's media are connected down to about 5 different interests, and it's just horrendous how it's controlled. We know that here in New Zealand, especially if you're viewed as a minor party, how difficult it is to get main media attention, and that's been hyper hyper strengthened by the fact that the government's given them X amount of millions of dollars to be friends, and yet it's not spoken about at all. So what's that old saying? You don't bite the hand that feeds you. And this government shelled out a lot of money to media in New Zealand, and they've got friends. I mean, you just have to watch those 1 o'clock briefings that Bloomfield and Ardern were doing. Did any one of those journalists have a hard standing tricky question for them? No. And it was just like a whole bunch of mates getting together with a cup of tea for about half an hour to do a briefing. That's what it looked like to me. So I think the objectivity needs to be questioned without going overboard, but just really us, the public, asking the hard questions of the media. Because at the end of the day, if the public lose faith in the media and switch off, what does that mean? They're going to lose revenue, and I think that's what we need to do as a media consumption audience. We need to say, well, if these buggers aren't playing fair and being objective and getting the information to the people like they should, then the people shouldn't custom their TV channels, their radio channels, and just hold them to account that way. Because of course, if you affect their wallet, they'll take much more notice of you.
Well, they may, but in the case of stuff.co.nz, they were worth a grand total of 100 cents. That's how much they got purchased for. And this was incidentally directly after they removed the public's ability to comment and vote up and vote down the articles that were on there. So I think to a large degree, allowing the audience to comment and give their likes or give their dislikes to a large degree is basically missing, right? Balance is missing. People are either on one side or the other, and that means arguments cannot happen. Now, you might question that and go, well, what do you mean, Vinny? If these people argue all the time. It's like, no, they don't. The definition of an argument is two people who technically disagree, listening openly and honestly to each other's evidence and evaluating it. That is what an argument actually is. Have you seen one of those in the New Zealand media ever, ladies and gentlemen? Both people have to be listening to each other and care about what's being said. I haven't seen it yet. And that's the real frustration for me. Because when we are honest with each other, when we listen to each other, that's when we realize that, hey, I can learn something from this guy. Hey, I don't know everything.
Yeah, that's right. And no one does know everything about everything. It's impossible to do that. And, and I think what happens is, especially around media commentators, they tend to prop themselves up on these pedestals and think that when they speak something that it's the God's truth. And of course it's not. It's all a lot of media commentary, especially whether it be on social media, whether it be on mainstream media, it's all subjective mostly, unless you're speaking to a set of facts that you can bullet point. That's where it sort of starts to strain out into some sort of basis. But no, I agree with you, Vinny. That's why media channels such as yours allow us to come in and just all the people that are sort of awake to what's going on can have a forum to talk about these issues that mainstream media won't air. And that leads me to another point. Just seeing some of the comments that come up in the threads when we do these sorts of things, they're really interesting. When I'm looking away, I'm looking at those, and it's like I like to think that a lot of these people are awake, but they've got to be smart and be awake and intelligent in where they're coming from, especially in regards to us, because we are the only party that's absolutely calling the government out and calling out the world situation. We want to defend our freedoms and rights. And I want to say to people, just wake up to yourselves, get over yourselves, and accept the facts that you've been told about who I am or Michael Stace or Bill or any one of our candidates. We are all the same. We all want to rescue our country. We are just ordinary Kiwis. I didn't even want to be doing this, but now that I'm in it, I'm blooming committed to winning the fight and getting in there to fix our country up. But, it's time that people really make up their mind. Do they want to save our country or not? Let's do this, because, there is there's just no option but to do it, and
Well, we'll try and come up with a different slogan, of course, but yes.
Yeah, we will. We don't want to use that one. Obviously, I just seen the Labour signs background in the backdrop there. No, that's right. But we need to come together and give ourselves the best chance of doing this. So I've got to say, in the last couple of days, we've had some really, really encouraging discussions with other minor parties. By the way, Vinny, that we had spoken to previously, and we're getting together. And I think what people are starting to see now is that, from the other minor parties, especially when we have our big rally and our campaign launch on Sunday, that this is about all of us. I don't care whether you don't like me or not. I really don't. But I've got your interests at heart, my interests at heart, our families, your kids, our kids at heart. And, and I've always said to people, come and meet me, look me in the eye, and find out who I am, feel me. That's the best way to do it. And, if my family went so shy, my wife, my kids, we would have done the whole, tried to do the Women's Weekly thing of the family expose and all that. But, I've got a young, beautiful wife. We're both of us are Christians. We serve our community in Northland and in Auckland. We're about as regular meat and potatoes as you can get. Well, actually, we're mostly vegetarian, so no, so not much meat in there at all. But you know what I'm trying to say, and people really have to. They've got to decide: do we want to save our country or not? Don't because we're not taking any more notice of the trolls and the Terry Opines and all that. We just got to. We are getting on with it because this is it. This is it.
I think as well. The concept that we're dealing with here is primarily narcissism. All right, if I may, Narcissus drowned because he saw his reflection in the river, and it was so beautiful that he leaned in to kiss himself, and then he drowned. Right, a form of self-obsession, to a large degree, is what is possessing many political people. Now, a lot of people don't understand narcissism is on a spectrum, okay? It ranges from malignant down one side, those would be the psychopathic narcissists, and to benign down the other side. Now, what's the difference, ladies and gentlemen? Here is the basic summation. Every psychopath is a narcissist, but not all narcissists are psychopaths. Every narcissist can be an asshole, but not all assholes are narcissists. All right, so that's basically it. And before you ask the question, ladies and gentlemen, yes, I'm a narcissist. I'm sorry, but the point here is, can you trust somebody who has a grandiose self-image? Think about, say, Muhammad Ali, Bruce Lee. Could they be knocked down? Were they the best? Did they talk themselves up as though they were? Yes. And yes, all right, that's the difference between a malignant and a benign narcissist, is that they back up what they say. And so far, every single question, no matter which direction it comes from, and this is the difficulty with conspiracy or truth, just in general, is that the world is very, very grey, and there are so many different directions from which you can ask questions, so many different perspectives from which are involved within the understanding of truth et al. And whenever I have asked you a question from anybody, from any source, from any direction, or even stuff that I've made up of myself, on the spot, you come up with an answer. Okay, and this is what we call the trivium. The trivium is when you ask the questions who, what, when, where, how, and why. Why is the last question you asked. Once you understand and people can ask you the questions who, what, when, where, why, how, you can rattle the answers off without delay. That's how you test if somebody knows what they're talking about. Go back to all the Billy TK interviews that have been done on this channel, ladies and gentlemen. I think this is episode number 4. Every single time Billy's been asked a question, no problem answering the questions completely straight up. Now, here's a question for you, ladies and gentlemen. Have you ever seen anyone standing for a political party of any kind do anything like that, even close to that? Have you ever seen anybody undergo this much scrutiny on their own interviews? No, you haven't. I haven't. This is an entirely new ball game. And I think what the Trump phenomenon, and no, I'm not a Trump supporter, but the Trump phenomenon supports the rhetoric, or the logic rather, that human beings nowadays realize that they don't want a politician representing them. They want somebody who's actually done something in their life to represent them. And Billy, you've actually done stuff in your life. And thank you.
Thank you. No, when we did that quick question and answer thing last week, that took me, completely by surprise. And I enjoyed it, but it caught me completely unaware. And a few people said to me afterwards, "Man, you handled that well." I said, "Well, I had no choice." And but I always, when I watch people being interviewed, I look at their body language and I look at how they respond as well to see whether they're telling the truth or not. And you always look for that breath that they take when they think, or when they go, whether they like the question or not, and and how they respond immediately after that sort of tells you whether someone's on the level or not.
If I may, the reason for that breath is because when you are under threat, your heart starts to pump much faster and you get an adrenaline rush, all right? And so that causes a fast intake of oxygen, but in order to keep the body going. So if you see people just that kind of thing, they're under threat. Billy hasn't done that yet because he's understood that the reason behind the questions is, what's the answer? It's not, are you a bad person? I'm going to attack you.
Oh yeah, but and I think also that that people know you, that you're not going to let anyone off the hook. The thing like I told you, I used to love watching your show when you first came out, walking around with your loud speakerphone and all that. Just I used to love that because you've got the mongrel in you, and I know that you're not gonna let me off or anyone else off. And if you smell a dead rat, you're going to be the first to blow the lid on it. And I think that's something that your audience knows. And and all the people trying to get their 5 seconds of fame by having to go at me, well, good on them, because I'm certainly not in it for fame. I just want to do my job, get in there, fix the country, and go back to my regular life after a term. And just we were talking about last night, and when someone said to me, "Hey, Billy, do you see yourself as a career politician?" No, and I don't, and I never have. And but I know what this fight is that we're having right now, and if we don't win it, then our country is gone. It is gone beyond a joke, and that's why, some of the other people that have come on board the team are exactly the same with me. They're quite happy with their lives, but they're distressed by what they're seeing, concerned by what they're seeing, and they know that if we don't come together to fight this fight as free-thinking, free New Zealand citizens, we're going to lose our country, and it's goodbye. And watching Rosa Corey's interview that you did with her the other week, Vinny, she's absolutely dead right. This is the fight for global freedom. This is not a joke. It's a conspiracy, but it's a conspiracy fact against us, the free people of the planet. And unfortunately, we have a government that's completely complicit with it. And we've got to get rid of them, and we've got to prevent National coming in without strong backboned opposition to keep these guys accountable. We were talking about that yesterday, and one of the things that I haven't seen in any of the other parties is that I actually haven't seen the backbone that would give me confidence to know that they would, if they were in there by themselves, they would actually have the mongrel in them to affect the change and the outcomes that we need for our people, for all of us in this country.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective on this is, I'm going to die before I stop trying to free my country from scumbaggery. All right, that's my line in the sand. You want me to stop fighting for freedom? Kill me, because that's the only way you're going to get me to stop. Do you share that perspective, Billy?
Oh, well, I do, because I mean, just this whole thing of people trying to get in touch with me to threaten and all that sort of stuff. We've crossed some sort of line. We've got some really awesome brothers and from the army that are looking after me, and that's as real as anything. But why is it real? Why does it have to be real? Why would anyone that is protecting our country from being destroyed and their freedoms with it? Why would anyone need anyone to look after them? I mean, jeepers, I'm no snowflake myself, man, and I'm I've had more than a few tangles in my life where it's been pretty dicey, and that's for sure. But I'm a Christian man today. I stand on principles of the Lord, and but when it comes to my whānau and all that, obviously I'd be a completely different man if someone threatened that. But these are the things that matter most right now. That we put all that nonsense aside and just really be committed to defending our country, because at the end of the day, our lives won't be worth living if they have their way with us. And if people haven't seen Rose's interview with you, they need to, because she puts it exactly where it is. It's crucial that people understand that if we don't have a movement like ours going to Parliament to protect us, then we're done. And like I said in my Facebook post the other night, I spent half a day last Sunday with an expert on parliamentary processes and systems, and what I heard absolutely blew my mind. And I knew a lot already to begin with, but this guy was actually saying, look, did you realise that any Prime Minister could wake up today and say, today I'm killing all those with green eyes, and there'd be nothing that we could do from a legal perspective to prevent them from issuing a law like that? Nothing. And that's what we've got to get in and fix.
Yeah, there aren't any rules of conduct for the Prime Minister's office, and also my concern is as well parliamentary induction, because once you go into induction there are a whole bunch of rules and things that you can do and you can't do, and so on and so forth.
That's right.
I am afraid that this election is going to turn into a shit fight. I apologise for the use of the language, ladies and gentlemen, but I cannot find words to describe precisely what I think it's going to turn into that are better than that. Now, just for those of you in the audience who don't know this, have a look at this picture here. Spot the difference. Okay? This is John Key doing a all-seeing eye, Freemasonic hand sign. And this here is Jacinda Ardern doing the lion's paw Masonic hand sign. This is John Key giving out Freemasonic scholarships with his hands wide out in acceptance. And this is Jacinda Ardern handing out Freemasonic scholarships with her hands outstretched in acceptance. Can you see the difference, ladies and gentlemen? Now, at the moment, let's have a look at Billy. Now, what was it? Tanel88, great supporter of the show, wonderful mod. One of the things that she's wanting to know is what is the relationship, or rather the response to Israel and things of that nature. But just before we go to that question, the tax-free status of Freemasonry, as we brought up on the interview that some of you may have seen replayed on the NZPP channel today. Can we? It's not going to be a slash and burn policy or something like that. It's much like Jaws. You're either going to kill the animal or you're going to cut off its food supply. And essentially what we need to do is just cut off the food supply from all these corrupt infiltrating organizations, because they're allowed to go under the radar and they're able to get away with tax-free status at this point. I was wondering, do you believe that something needs to be done about that? And on top of that, Michael Stace is a Freemason as well, but bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, I've had a number of Freemasons on this show. Have a look at James Wright's interviews and have a look at Frater X's interviews if you think that all Freemasons are on the take and they're all evil and stuff like that, and you'll be very, very surprised that, hey, no, they're not all one cult.
No, I want to correct that, Vinny. He's not a Freemason at all. Not at all.
Well,
he worked for them for 3 years, helping them with websites and marketing. And in fact, we actually have a plan to deal with Freemasonry in New Zealand. You may or may not be aware of this, but Freemasonry was approved in New Zealand by a writ of the government back in the day, which permitted Freemasonry to operate at all levels. And there's a lot more to it, and I can't go into it right now. But Freemasonry is not a good thing. It's certainly not a Christian thing. And anyone that's done any study on Freemasonry knows that nobody in Freemasonry knows what's going on in the upper echelons. If you're not past the 28th degree in the degree rank, you don't know anything about what's going on in the inside. And in New Zealand, I think there's 133 degree Freemason that we know of. And it's only when you become a 30, 31, and 32nd Freemason do you get invited to be initiated. And the 33 degree is an honorary rank. It's not an official degree. It's an honorary rank that you get given, which says that you're a higher, and then from there you become initiated, if you choose to be, into the Shriner rite. And it's not good. It's evil. And if it's in a Hindu society, it has a Hindu faceplate. If it's in a Jewish society, it's B'nai Rith, it has a Jewish faceplate. If it's in a Muslim society, it has a Muslim faceplate. And it's not, and that's why when you go into these lodges, they have three books of light, they call them. They have the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah sitting there. And it's a real mishmash, and it cannot be trusted, because in the upper echelons of Freemasonry anyway, which is verified by the writings of General Albert Pike from the mid to late 1800s, he says, Masonry is not Christian. It's got nothing to do with Christianity. In fact, it has nothing to do with any one religion, because the light is one light for all, but the light is the light of Lucifer, and it's certainly not the light of the Lord of the Bible. That's for sure. So I'm completely anti-Freemasonry, and if they do have that tax-free status, then we need to completely look at that, because one of the ironic things about Freemasonry is that they claim that they're a philanthropic organisation, but just like the Catholic Church, who claims the same thing in their programs, they themselves actually give very little money out. It's always raised with doing external fundraising, and they give portions of that away, but their own core wealth that they have gets pretty well protected.
Yeah. In fact, what was it? The Catholic Church, I believe a year or two ago, I saw an article come out saying that, 98% of Catholic Church donations go to out-of-court settlements for pedophile priests, right, to cover it up. And I was just like, that's shocking and yet unsurprising. Israel, the Israel question that Tanel has been asking for weeks. What's your perspective on that and New Zealand's relationship with it? Before we go into that, I just want to preface this by saying during the Christchurch earthquake, some of you may remember some buildings fell on a van that had a couple of Israeli agents on it that were holding handfuls of New Zealand passports. Why New Zealand passports, you ask? Because New Zealand and Canada specifically are the most highly prized passports by the international intelligence community. Oh, what are you? Are you from Israel? Well, we're going to be suspicious about you. Oh, you're from New Zealand? Oh, come on in. That's the reason why they did that. And the Prime Minister, John Key, who was Jewish at the time, in fact, he still is technically, he was given, I believe, 3 phone calls by the Israeli Premier Ariel Sharon to let those agents go. And then they jumped on a plane and they skipped out of New Zealand. That's how strong the control of New Zealand is.
Yeah, so number one on that, my position is I'm against any government on the planet that uses its secret intelligence services to murder people. And any government, if it was ours, the US, England, any one of them, if they use their secret intelligence services to assassinate people by stealth, I'm totally against that. I'm all for, don't get me wrong, I'm against wars, I'm against conflict like that. But at least in a war, you train as soldiers and you go and fight it, and you have combat and you have conflict like that you can understand. But the rules of around assassination and entry into friendly states where your assassins don't go through quarantine or passport control, to do jobs in other people's countries, that's disgusting. In terms of Israel, irrelevant, absolutely irrelevant. My focus is on our country, Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm into all about protecting all New Zealand citizens, regardless of race, religion, creed, and that's my focus. When I would feel exactly the same way if someone asked me about Switzerland or England or anything like that. I really don't care. In terms of my focus about what's happening overseas, we need to focus entirely on what we're doing in our country, because if and I did an interview with John Mappin from Camelot TV, as you know, the other week, and he said that the world of freedom fighters is watching us very, very closely in New Zealand to see what we're doing, because they know that if New Zealand goes down, that we are the test case, and if we go down and go under, the rest of the world will follow. So my absolute response to that is irrelevant. I'm focused on New Zealand.
So if New Zealand has no sovereignty, we don't have any freedom as a people, essentially.
Oh, that's exactly it. I mean, because sorry, mate, I've just got someone trying to ring me on on Facebook on here. I tried to turn those types of things off, but people just don't get it. Hold on a sec, mate. Please. Is that coming through on your feed?
No, it's not. It's only going into your ears through your...
Oh, great. Okay. All right. We'll leave it like that. That's fine, mate. That's not bothering me now then. Okay. So, if we lose our national independence, we're stuffed. It's almost being collapsed through debt that this government is getting us into, because, when you have a country that is in debt to the eyebrows that we are, and if they keep digging us into that debt rabbit hole, we will end up, being controlled by the people that own the debt. And so we don't want that. And that's why my presentations, when I present the pillars that NZPP stand for, number one is democracy. And at the bottom, after all the rest of it, is national independence and sovereignty. Because to have democracy, you need national independence and sovereignty. And to have national sovereignty, you need democracy. It cannot be one without the other. And that's what we stand on. And that's why it's so vitally important that people wake up to themselves. I don't care about trolls. I don't care about these questions that come at me about this, that, and the rest of it. My sole focus is protecting our democracy, protecting public safety, repairing and getting our economy functional, getting us out of debt, protecting our environment, and protecting our freedoms to choose what we want for our health. That's super. Those are the important things. And of course, national sovereignty and independence. Those are the things that matter, and no other country factor into those, because it's about our country.
Now, we have $1.2 million to raise at this point to contest this election. And we have so many people around all the comment sections and things like that. They're not a registered party. They'll never get it in time. That's a fact. This kind of thing. And I hate to say, I told you so, but can you just give people a little bit of an update on that part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really, really excited. The ink is drying on the paperwork as I'm sitting here, and we will be standing. We've got a great team, and you know what? We've even had another big minor party invite us to have discussions with them now on a more, shall we say, appetite basis, where they really see what we're wanting to do and they want to be a part of it now. And it's exciting that that's happening. But people. They can absolutely be assured we are standing. We're very proud of what we've got to announce. Our rally on Sunday is really effectively the launch of our nationwide campaign. It's all our candidates are flying in from all over the place. What we have done in 5 weeks with the support of the people out there has never been done before in New Zealand political history. Never even closely been done before.
I would say world history. This is actually a unique thing. There's never actually been an anti-New World Order party that has had any kind of success whatsoever.
Well, yeah. Thanks for that, mate. And part of that is that the things that we stand for, they're not fringe. These are important things like repairing our economy, keeping our environment clean and green, removing poisons from our land, re-examining our constitutional framework and making it serve the people rather than be a system where the government tries to get the people to serve it. The medical sovereignty and health sovereignty of our people, those things are super important, and business is important, having a good symbiotic relationship between business and environmental practices, but without destroying either. And what this government wants to do is destroy business using the whole climate change argument and all this other stuff. And I always laugh when I say climate change, because it used to be global warming, but when it was proved that wasn't happening the way they were saying, they then changed the narrative to climate change. Yeah. And that's, of course, a big part of Agenda 21 Sustainable Development / Agenda 2030 of the United Nations, is to destroy, businesses that operate in the green arena.
Yeah, well, I remember I was at a socialist meeting one time, and this lady comes up to me and goes, "Oh, you're a climate denier, aren't you?" And I go, "No, I never denied there was a climate." And they go, "Oh, but you deny that climate change is happening." I go, "No, it's been happening for 4 billion years." You know, let's just get over it, folks. Okay, and I think also one point on that is that these renewable energy solutions and stuff of that nature, we've seen evidence from Germany that doing the wind, doing the solar, it just doesn't work very well. And to the large degree, the coal industry needs to be massively supported. In fact, I even saw a new Conservatives candidate with a T-shirt on that says "Black Coal Matters." I was wondering what the perspective is on mining and those other kind of things that essentially these are trapped resources that take effort to get out and they give back a hell of a lot. Carbon is not a poison. You know, this is something that plants breathe, and indeed, if we had a certain low level of carbon in the atmosphere, all life on this planet would cease to exist. It is the life-giving gas, and these people are treating it like a pollutant, and that's because they hate life itself.
Absolutely bang on, Vinny, with all of that, and that's the thing that we've got to, expose and deal with, and use honest, independent science to help us decide what's best for us, so that those balances are arrived at, but not at the expense of freedom, not at the expense of sovereignty, and not at the expense of Kiwis that have lives involved in productivity sectors where the environment is involved. I mean, like I said the other week, I've met untold amounts of farmers that care deeply about the environment, and they're considered a hostile sector in New Zealand by the government.
Well, not only by the government, by other citizens and stuff like that. I saw a piece on a couple of farmers who are having their lands taken off them because the government regulations have made it so expensive to farm, and they're so afraid to even mention to their fellow people in their communities that they're farmers because of their hostility towards them.
Yeah, no, it's a strange world that we live in right now. We need to get real and get back to truth and honesty and practicality. We need to, one of the things that we need to realise that's going to get us out of this magnificent debt that we've got is productivity within our country's borders, so that we create a strong, robust productivity sector, and that includes anything of export value, and get those pumping so that we can get foreign money into our country that's buying our stuff. It's going to be foreign receipts that save our country and help us pay down debt. But what I also want to do, as I've mentioned before, is that part of the whole monetary reform aspect of where we're thinking includes also looking at the type of debt that we have, because as you know, we live in a fractional reserve banking system where huge amounts of money is fiat money, which is just created out of thin air, and I actually want to find out what the core principal debt looks like, and I think we need to attack that, so that these people that have this corrupt banking system aren't going to bankrupt our grandchildren's grandchildren based on thin air money that has no value in paper.
What about ever considered a gold standard or silver standard?
Well, we were talking about that the other day with people who really know the topic, and what we need in terms of a currency is to have it backed up with reserves. And currently, I can hardly think of any countries off the top of my head that actually have strong reserves that back up their paper money. If you remember, Gaddafi was trying to do the same thing with the oil states.
Gold dinars.
That's it. And he didn't last very long after he announced that, did he? And so, with the Arab Spring and the conquest of Libya, which saw him be assassinated by a CIA-funded militia, and so we do need to look at that, and that's all part of the whole thing that we need to expose and deal with. Just a comment someone came up with there, but what about some commitments from me? Well, just go to our party website, NZPP.org, and have a look at what we stand for pillars. They're all in there, and that's what we're going to be fighting on. There's so much more policy that we're going to be adding into our website over the next few days. People are going to be avalanche by it, and it's actually my belief it's going to be the strength of not only our stance, but also the quality and the thoroughness of the policies that we're going to have to present to people to look at, to know that we are a party that will be able to affect change and know what we're doing and how to implement those changes, and that we're not a one-trick pony like some of the other parties. And what I always say is that without democracy being number one, there is no outdoors, there is no monetary reform, there is no conservatism. It's just one community destruction of freedoms in our country and our ability as New Zealand citizens to live free and undisturbed, and that's so important to us.
Which is why I believe that NZPP should seriously consider trying to go for 51%, first past the post, right? If any of these other parties get in, any of them, there ain't going to be a free New Zealand to a large degree. This is, again, I'm just speaking out of fear here.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is we all started off with fear, and we all started off with anger and feelings of hopelessness and helplessness. But we now need to move past that and go, right, how are we going to be able to wake up the other major percentage of New Zealanders to what's going on? We have got some amazing people, Vinny, in the last couple of days that are coming in on our team. That I'm really humbled by. These are absolutely magnificent New Zealanders. A couple of them are new Kiwis, and they are just magnificent people that are going to really push us well above our minor party status. I don't believe we are a minor party anymore. We're going to be at 4,500 members in the next day or so. We've had 1.2 million people now engage into our message platform, and we're doing this, and it's spreading quicker and quicker and quicker, and just all types of people, middle class people, business owners, rich people, poor people, Maori, Pacific Islanders, Pākehā, everything you can think of, Chinese, Asian, are coming in behind this movement, and it's very, very humbling. And as I always say, there's two ways you can take this. You can become a stuffed up, arrogant politician, or you can remain a humble servant of the people. And in my view, as well, I want to be a servant for the Lord to use to do good things for all people.
There is no other alternative, ladies and gentlemen, but victory. I think that we have the resources, we have the power, we have the people, and we have the strength within ourselves to contribute individually to this cause. If you're sitting around wondering, what can I do? What can I do? That is not a question that somebody else necessarily can answer for you. What are your skills? What are your capacities? Whom do you know? What do you have? My old producer told me that people bring one of three things to a deal: talent, resources, and capital. What can you bring to the deal, ladies and gentlemen? How can you contribute? Answer those questions yourself and go out and start doing it. You don't need permission. Go out and start making a difference today. Make a difference in your own life first. Otherwise, nobody will take you seriously. Billy, thank you very much for coming on the show again today. And we have one more show this month. Next week on TK Tuesday, we will be officially a registered party, and the launch in Auckland. Please give people the details of that just before we go.
Yeah, thank you, Vinny, and I look forward to working with you on a continual basis. So on Sunday, whānau family, we're going to have a big family day at the Logan Campbell Centre, and it's basically going to be from 1 till about 3, and just come and be a part of it and see what we're about. We will also be promoting our merger. We want to see kids. We want to see families. I'm trying to see if we can get some people that'll do candy floss and things like that along. I love candy floss, by the way, just saying. Try and turn it into a joyful celebration, because, this is happening. We are going to get into Parliament, and we are going to protect our country. And I want us to go from being fearful to mobilising into action. So please come along, and we want to be able to celebrate this as a family, but after that, the real hard work begins on the campaign trail to get all of New Zealand behind this campaign to save our country.
I want you to steel yourself against it, ladies and gentlemen. Really, really think about how hard you have to be. This is going to get ugly, and you have to have your feet planted in the ground like a tree and say, no, you move. This has been the Vinny Eastwood Show. Billy TK has been my very special guest. Sign up to the party at nzpp.org.nz. Reclaim New Zealand for all the people. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, bear in mind that this is a listener-supported broadcast and has been for over a decade. So in the description, you will find the other things. what were we talking about? The VinnyEastwoodShow.com, patreon.com/Vinny Eastwood. The PayPal email is guerrillamedia77@gmail.com. Anything and everything you can do to support this broadcast independently is absolutely valued, ladies and gentlemen. There are hundreds of people watching right now. Please move your finger, move your mouse, and click that like button, ladies and gentlemen. Click the share button. Click the subscribe button. Get on the team, ladies and gentlemen, because there is now no alternative. You must support the truth. You must support reason and freedom. There is no alternative. So thank you very much for listening to the Vinny Eastwood Show, the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state is Vinny's jokes. And just before I go, thank you very much to all the moderators in the chat room, and thank you to everybody who liked, everybody who donated. Things are going great. And it's all because of you folks. Catch you later.